Hello and welcome. I'm thrilled to have you here on this masterclass on how to rewire your migraine brain. Today we will learn the two biggest mistakes most people with migraine are making and what we should be doing instead. But before we dive in, let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Melissa McDonald and I've been a physiotherapist for over 25 years, specialising in headache and migraine. My journey into this field was ignited by my personal experience with migraine. My first attack was when I was only 12 years old, and I have been through the process, like many of you. Multiple doctors, specialist appointments, scans, medications, before I realised that there had to be a better way, and that has been my life's work. I know the pain, I know the frustration and the determination it takes to reclaim your life, which is why I'm so committed to sharing what I've learned with you today. It all starts when we're told by the doctor that we have migraine. If we're lucky, they will explain that it's a genetic neurological condition, and then they go on to say that we have to live with it and manage it by taking medication and avoiding triggers. Now, this is where it all goes wrong. Think about the history of your migraines. Have they always been the same, or have there been periods in your life when they have been better or worse? Of course, for most of us, this is the case. So consider this. If pain can change, then pain can change. What do I mean? Our brains have neuroplasticity. This means that our brains are constantly rewiring, and this is affected by many things, including pain, but also lifestyle factors. And this is where it gets exciting. We can control the rewiring of our brain, and that's where I come in. I've literally worked with thousands of people in my physiotherapy business, and what I have found over all of these years is that what gets 80% of the results is not the hands-on work that I've been doing, but the lifestyle modifications and the subsequent rewiring of the brain. That's what reduces migraine attacks. This is why I'm so excited to share my program with you, because I know that it's going to make a huge difference. So let's get started with the two most common mistakes. Chasing triggers can feel like a never-ending game, one that you never win. It's like chasing a moving target. Identifying your triggers can be an important step in managing migraine, and it's something that we all have likely tried at some point. We've kept meticulous diaries, analysed our diets, and avoided certain stimulus. But here's the thing. Migraine is complex and it doesn't always follow a predictable pattern. Plus, triggers can vary widely from person to person. What triggers a migraine for one person might not have the same effect on another. And you've probably found what triggers a migraine one day won't trigger another day. Confusing? Well, it is until you understand threshold theory, which we'll talk about later. Focusing solely on triggers or trigger avoidance can lead to an incredibly restrictive lifestyle, limiting our experiences and joy and very rarely working. We have a sensitive migraine brain and we need to nurture it to positively rewire our brain, and stressing out over triggers does not do this. Many people I see have a very long list of triggers, and if something is obvious and triggers a migraine every time, a common example of this might be alcohol, then for sure we should avoid those triggers. But if you sometimes eat chocolate and you get a headache, and sometimes you eat chocolate and you don't get a headache, then I would not call that a trigger. So unless you have a trigger that is consistent and obvious, honestly, don't waste your time and energy chasing triggers, especially food triggers. Because what I've found over the years is that the stress that creates within you actually does way more harm to your sensitive migraine brain and reduces your threshold to migraine than finding a trigger would actually do in terms of helping. So, okay, let's talk about the second biggest mistake, and that is relying on medications. This is a tricky one because you go to the doctor and they give you medications. Sometimes it'll work for a while, but then your body might build resistance to it and you'll have to go on a stronger dose or a different medication, and you're just chasing the next best medication. Unfortunately, this is the medical model in the Western world, and this is all our doctors have time for. Medication have undoubtedly brought hope and relief to many of you, and there is certainly a time and a place for medication, but you need to put it into context. Medication can provide relief, but it doesn't address the underlying factors that are contributing to the migraine attack in the first place. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a wound without treating the infection underneath. So what we want to do instead is to get to the root cause of why our migraine attacks are happening and work on that. So then we're much less reliant on medication. Now, I'm not saying that we should stop taking our medication. I have medication for my migraine attacks. And when they're bad, when I have an attack, when I haven't been following the lifestyle strategies, then I will certainly take my medication. It just shouldn't be our only strategy, our only way of managing migraine, because our body can build up tolerance to that medication. It can become more sensitive to pain. We can get rebound headaches, plus all the negative side effects of medications. Besides, something to consider is that our body has its own natural medicine cabinet. We are actually designed to manage and alleviate pain through the release of natural pain-relieving substances. These substances are often referred to as endogenous pain modulators, and they work to reduce the perception of pain and promote a sense of well-being. So activities such as laughter, exercise, breath work, mindfulness, meditation, positive social interactions, all these can lead to the release of these pain-relieving substances, and they can contribute to a reduction in our pain perception. This alone can lead to a reduction in the intensity and frequency of your migraine attacks. Okay, so that's the two mistakes: chasing triggers and using medication as your only strategy to reduce your attacks. So what do we want to do instead? First and foremost, I want you to understand about migraine threshold and central sensitization, or what I call the pain dial. So they're big words, but let me explain it to you. So with central sensitization, imagine our migraine brain or our nervous system as being like a dial. One you can turn up or one you can turn down with the lifestyle choices you make. The sensitivity is influenced by genetics, lifestyle, and a range of other factors. When the dial is up, we have increased sensitization. Our migraine brains are more sensitive and will trigger an attack more readily. The good news, you can recalibrate that dial through mindful choices, creating a buffer between triggers and attack. Another way to think about this is the threshold theory. Imagine a bucket of water. You know, like at the playgrounds where there's water parks and they have that big bucket, it fills up with water, and then once it reaches a certain amount, tips over, the water comes flying down and all the kids running around squealing because they've just been covered by the water. So imagine that bucket. Imagine our migraine brain like that bucket. So we've got this genetic predisposition to migraine. Let's call that gene our migraine bucket. We can determine how big or how small that bucket is. So if we've got a really big bucket, then we can get away with so much more. We might have had a glass of wine, skipped a meal, had a bad night's sleep, we might be feeling stressed. All these things are building up and filling our bucket, layering, until we've hit the threshold, our bucket is full, it tips over, and that's our migraine attack. So if we have a really big bucket, we can get away with so much more life than what we could if we only had a small bucket. So what we need to look at is how we can change the size of our migraine bucket, or improve our threshold to migraine, or turn that pain dial down to reduce the sensitization of our nervous system. So we've already discussed neuroplasticity, and you might have also heard of epigenetics. So we have the migraine gene, And we know now that we can change how that gene is expressed through what we do in our day-to-day life. So we can turn our genes on and off, which is really exciting. So having the migraine gene, it's no longer a sentence that, yes, we have to live with it, but there are so much things we can do to turn the expression of that gene off or down so that it's not such a big problem in our day-to-day life. And what we've learned about epigenetics, neuroplasticity, and central sensitization is that our brain is constantly changing and remodeling, rewiring, and we can affect those changes and how sensitive our brain is. This will determine how frequent and severe our attacks are. Now, there is no cure to migraine. That gene is always there lurking. But once you know what to do and that it works, it's so easy to be motivated to make the necessary changes. So to summarize, rather than chasing triggers and relying on medication, we can rewire our brain through lifestyle strategies, simple, sustainable, consistent habits that we incorporate into our everyday life to improve our migraine threshold, to make sure that we're getting the most out of life without the constant fear of the next migraine attack. And here's the exciting part. There's a solution that empowers you to take control. It's not a quick fix, but a journey of transformation. The Thriving with Migraine course is a holistic approach to migraine management. We recognize the complexity of migraine and we focus on addressing multiple aspects of our well-being. We go beyond just triggers and medication. By considering factors like lifestyle, stress, sleep, nutrition, exercise, emotional well-being, and more, we create an effective, comprehensive strategy for managing migraine. It's about building our resilience, raising our threshold, and reducing the overall impact that migraine has on our lives. Imagine being part of a supportive community, learning from my expertise and the experience of others who understand your challenges. Remember that the journey to lasting relief is within your grasp. You have the power to turn down your pain dial and transform your relationship with migraine. I invite you to join us on the 6-week Thriving with Migraine course. Click below for more information